Guten Tag und herzlich willkommen. Mein Name ist Matthias Fleig und es freut mich, Sie im Namen des eLearning-Kanals zu unserem heutigen Interview begrüßen zu dürfen. Wir werden im Herbst mit dem eLearning Campus eine Eventreihe durchführen zu dem Thema Learning Ecosystem. Das wird in 6 Masterclasses jeweils am Freitag von Ende Oktober bis Anfang Dezember laufen. Und für jede Masterclass haben wir einen internationalen Special Guest eingeladen, der jeweils die Keynote an diesen Masterclasses halten wird. Und mit unserer Interviewreihe nutzen wir die Möglichkeit, um mit unseren Special Guests schon mal vorab Fragen zu stellen und so ein bisschen schon mal in das Thema vertiefend einzutauchen. Heute freut es mich, mit Bob Mosher, einer der Mitbegründer von den 5 Moments of Need, so ein bisschen über das Thema Performance Support, Unterstützung am Arbeitsplatz zu reden, und viel Spaß mit dem Interview. First of all, thank you for taking your time for our interview. Before we start with the first question, can you perhaps introduce yourself in a few sentences?
Of course, honored to be here, my friend. Thanks so much for the invite. Bob Mosher, one of the co-founders of an organization called Apply Synergies. We specialize in workflow learning, moment of need. You'll hear about that in the questions. My 41st year in education, so I've been at this for a while and very much looking forward to the dialogue today. Thanks for the invite.
We look forward to your answers as well. So our first question, you already mentioned the 5 moments of need. From our experience, the approach is not that common here in Germany. So perhaps to start off, can you kind of define what the 5 moments of need are?
Certainly. They were born out of my dear colleague, Dr. Conrad Gottfriedson, and his work when we realized that training alone, as we'll talk about, is really not enough to get people to be proficient. It's wonderful, but it's not enough. And so the 5 moments emerged from this analysis that Con did around, well, what do learners really need when they want to perform? Not just learn, when they want to perform. And so the 5 moments Con came up with were they don't know anything. So the first moment is new. I'm new to stuff, right? The second moment is, well, I have a base knowledge, so I want more, right? And those two we have historically done brilliantly in training. What Con realized is there's also, to the learner though, this world of apply, right? I'm going to training to do something. And so often then I go from new and more into apply what I think I know. And then there's 2 derivatives of apply, are like when things go wrong. That's an interesting moment of apply, or when I also have a challenge in trying to keep up with change, which obviously in the world we live in today is everywhere. So new, more, typically addressed by training. Apply, solve, and change. The other, and to most learners, the most important part of the 5 that we'll talk about today and how to get into more intentionally.
Brilliant. I think you kind of alluded to it already, but let's get more into depth. What makes these 5 moments of need interesting for companies?
I love the way the question is asked, because you didn't say how important is 5 moments to L&D, or how important is 5 moments, how important it is to a company. And this is why it is, my friend, because companies want to perform better. They want their employees to develop themselves personally and such. And for too long, I know as an L&D person, I only addressed 2 of the 5. I was very good at new and more, tons of things for new and more, little to nothing for apply, change, and solve. So this is so important to companies because they want all 5. We as L&D have to get better at providing for all 5.
So we have kind of alluded to what the 5 moments of need are and why it's important. So I think the next logical question is, how can you successfully introduce the 5 moments of need? Are there typical do's and don'ts, things you might not want to do?
2 very simple things that help people get started. Number 1 is we have to stop asking about training things when people walk into our office for our services. And we also have to then add on methodologies and ways to design for apply, change, and solve first. We're conditioned to build training first and ask a lot of training questions. When, what's your budget? Can I meet with an SME and they can tell me everything that should go in the class? That's training speak, right? So if we want to go into the 5 moments, we have to start out with, okay, look, you might be in my office saying I want 5 days of leadership training or whatever, but I want to reframe that question. Why are you in my office? Why, what brought you here? I'm guessing it's because you think our leaders aren't good, or, what does good look like? What will they perform? How will we know when this is done that they are good leaders? that begins a completely different discussion and opens the door for you to do this, because they'll get that and you can say, well, look, to solve that, we can't just build training. We need something more. And then secondly, start with what we call a proof of concept, my friend, meaning start small. And this is hard for L&D because we think in words like curriculum, course, right? And I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a proof of concept on a behavior or a performance need, and it may be very small. It may be very small. And so changing the dialogue and having a quick win with a simple delivery is what often triggers this into more opportunities.
The topic of development of skills or competencies isn't new. I think there are literally dozens of approaches that are known here in Germany, at least. So my question is kind of what advantages does the 5 moments of need have compared to other models of competence development?
It's a great question, my friend. And here's the thing, and I've been using this lately, is we're hearing a lot about nowadays upskill and reskill, right? If I had 1,000 professionals in front of me from across the world and said, how many of you are involved in re or upskilling right now? They'd all raise their hand. My question is, when you're done, to what end? And let me clarify. If they're going to be skilled, skilled, then you're stopping at new and more. You're taking them from not having or aware of skills to having or aware of skills. My question is, what about them being skillful? And by skillful, I mean not just skilled to a moment, but skillful beyond that, to remain skillful, to keep up with change. That's where a lot of, to be honest, I'm nervous about what I'm seeing in the industry, because a lot of competency or skill programs are all about skilling to a point to make people, and then when I'm done, I'll check the box and I'll test you and that type of stuff. That is not what I think we're being asked to address, my friend, right now. The buyer wants people who become and remain skillful, and you don't become skillful unless you address, apply, change, and solve. That those 3 things are in the workflow beyond knowing, understanding, or testing out of something, right? So this I think we have a rare opportunity, and 5 moments really lets us address what I think the full spectrum of the need is right nowadays.
I think I couldn't agree more with what you just said. It's very typical that a lot of the times we have a web-based training or a series of web-based trainings. You have your final questionnaire you have to answer. If you have 80% correct, well, you're done. And a week later, you probably have forgotten most of what
does that mean, right? I mean, another one being used right now, my friend, is skills gap. Let's close the skills gap. What does that mean? So I don't know anything about accounting, and then when I'm done, I know about accounting and I can test out of accounting. Does that mean I'm an accountant? Probably not. So you might have closed my awareness gap, and I'm using that word on purpose. That is not, to me, a skill gap. A skill gap is the application of understanding. I can demonstrate a skill. So that's what concerns me about what's going on right now. There's confusion, in my opinion, in the vocabulary, and we have to be very careful.
Interestingly, a lot of times I hear about the 5 moments of need. I also encounter the term performance support, which also I think is not that well known here in Germany, what the performance support is. So
thank you.
Again, the question to you, what is it, and what is the connection to the 5 moments of need?
I love that. Again, super questions, my friend. So let's talk about categories, if I may, right? And because I get this question a lot. Workflow learning, embedded learning, to me is a discipline. It is a way in which I want to be supported in my development, right? Well, disciplines have to have frameworks. And for us, we have to have methodology. That making sense? So 5 moments, my friend, is a framework to address workflow learning as an approach. Okay, great. So there's the next circle, right? Well, what do I build? I mean, 5 moments isn't building anything. 5 moments is a framework to build towards, but it isn't a thing, right? Performance support is a tool. It is a deliverable. Performance support is like a job aid, frankly. It's like a digital coach, which we'll probably talk about a bit today, which because obviously technology is very big nowadays. CPT, I mean, right, that is all over the place. I view that as a form of performance support, but it's a deliverable. So as an L&D professional, I have 2 builds now. I still build training, whatever that, a course, e-learning, whatever that might be, and then I build performance support as a deliverable for whatever I might have to make.
You will give the masterclass keynote on people during our Summit Campus on November 17th. We talked a lot about the company perspective on performance support, 5 months of need. But I think the other side of the coin are the employees. So let me ask you, how can companies create acceptance for performance support? Or do you think there's usually some kind of resistance?
Okay, again, I love the question and the context, right? Because in the end, it's all about the learner, the people. If they don't buy this, what are we doing, right? It's a product that we want people to consume, right? Here's the exciting thing that I think hopefully everyone will take heart in. There has been performance support since the turn of time. I mean, if you walk into any organization and you look in a cubicle, the monitors are covered with sticky notes, covered with them. Because the performer knows that they need something to remind them, get them along. The problem is that's chaotic, out of date, not well designed, right? And so my point is they love this, my friend. Of all the tools I've ever built in training, and I've been around for 41 years, right? So I built a lot, right? E-learning, all that, built it all. The one I've never had to sell to them is this, because they're like, I've been doing this on my own forever because I got to get my work done. And you built for me this wonderful structured thing that you keep up to date. It's a click away from my desktop, or it's on my mobile phone or whatever. And it's architected to my workflow, and everything I need is at my fingertips. We call it 2 clicks, 10 seconds. You know, my friend, it's the hardest person to sell this on, if I may, has been L&D. Because they're a little anxious about the build and the deliverable. Every time we give this to those who we're building it for, it's like, look, I don't know what you call this thing, but I want 20 of them. And right? So that's the good news. We just have to get there as a discipline that we build it well.
Our campus or Summit Campus in the fall will mostly deal with the topic of corporate learning ecosystems. That is also kind of a new idea, I think, here in the German-speaking region. And there's a tendency to have a very technical focus on it. So as someone, as you mentioned, with like 40 years experience in L&D and in e-learning, how do you define learning ecosystem?
Yeah, I love this. I'm going to pivot off the word ecosystem. We all studied it in science at one time or another, right? And what it is a living organism. It's an ecosystem is a complement of living organisms with dependencies and so on. And when you add the word learning to it, it's the same thing. And so every organization has a learning ecosystem. Sometimes some people might even supplant it to say like a learning culture, but I don't think that goes enough, frankly. And so the ecosystem, yes, my friend, it is made up of a technology component. Like in nature, there's the sun, right? That is a part of the ecosystem, but it's not the natural ecosystem that we survive in, right? And so absolutely, technology is a part of the ecosystem that has to be well thought out, well vetted, but I love this, where we're going is, if it doesn't play well with other parts of the ecosystem, there's problems. You have a bad and unhealthy ecosystem. So people, process, technology, those are my 3 favorite things of what I think make up a learning ecosystem. Now I'm going to speak to people in my part later, right? The people are those that consume, right? That processes are the world they live in, that they've got, and the things they have to deal with politically and in their job and otherwise, and keep up with information and blah, blah, blah. And then technology is there to support all of that. So a learning ecosystem really has 3 components. And I'm going to say them, and I do believe they are in this order. People, you got to start with them and what they need and what their 5 moments are, right? Process, what is their workflow? What is the world they have to survive in? Good, bad, and ugly. And then technology, what are the underpinning of tools? And by the way, it's not just learning tools. There are other technologies out there that a learner would consider as part of their ecosystem. where does that fit? Too often, my friend, and I love your question, is we lead with technology. And guess what? In my 41 years, when we've done that, 9 times out of 10, it does not end up working because we're not balancing with and understanding the importance of the other two. And the square peg, if I may, if this translates, doesn't fit into the round hole, right? And so LMSs have had issues. E-learning doesn't get the uptake we want. Virtual instruction, kind of boring sometimes. But see, here's my problem is we just thought that technology would beget a great result. And without methodology and people and process, it doesn't.
We kind of have the idea that learning ecosystem is more or less like a coordination system to kind of navigate learning in a company. I think it's an interesting metaphor. But let me ask you, in your opinion, what can learning ecosystem or how can L&D benefit from this idea of learning ecosystem? I think we talked a lot about companies and people, and L&D kind of more of a negative way that L&D kind of has to change.
Yeah,
how can
that's a great question.
learning ecosystem help?
Yeah, and I don't mean to imply that, because here's the great news is that all of that is in dire need of orchestration. Dire need of orchestration. People, processes, and technologies in most learning ecosystems are a mess. They just are a mess. Ask any company how SharePoint's going, and they'll tell you. I can't find anything. It's out of date. There's 1,000 things in there that don't mean anything to me. And by the way, I think SharePoint's a part of a learning ecosystem, right? My LMS is this behemoth thing that I can never remember my password, let alone find the course that I need. So where I'm going with this, my friend, is that's what we do. I mean, the people, process, and technology are dying for a discipline to step up and orchestrate that, design that. Orchestration is design. Well, guess what? We're in L&D, learning and development, right? This is what we do. And so I think we are sitting at an enviable place, particularly with COVID and things, to be honest. I think that it exacerbated a lot of these needs. The 5 moments than we've ever seen them before. So the world is dying for a profession to step up and lead, step up and own this, and so I think, and I've seen some remarkable examples of where companies have stepped through that door. And I think it's a wonderful time. I think some L&D departments are feeling unappreciated, frankly, or devalued or defunded. Right. And I think among other situations, I don't think they positioned themselves right with the opportunity they have, because I think they would be the last to be devalued if we were seen as the orchestrator of this ecosystem at a really critical time in our world.
I think that's a pretty beautiful picture that a lot of L&D employees probably can underline.
Spectacular.
To wrap it up, can you perhaps tell us why we shouldn't miss your masterclass on your keynote on November 17th?
Well, obviously I'm a bit biased here, my friend, but I'm going to run at the people piece, right? And in my opinion, in 41 years, and I'll stand behind it, the times I have been devalued or missed my target is when I put process or technology ahead of people. And if we pivot, it's a 3-legged stool, but the legs aren't equal, in my opinion. They're not equally balanced, right? If people is it. They are who we serve. They have the 5 moments of need. If we focus on people first and serve them in the flow of work at their moment of need, we become so invaluable to them as a business partner. And I use that word on purpose, business partner, not learning partner, not training department. We become a business partner to the learner, to the management, to the KPIs, all the business stuff. But that is, in my opinion, only if we are seen as leading with people. That's what I will talk about. If we get mired in process or get enamored by technology, I think we're kind of seen as an outlier. Right. But if we're seen by the organization as always pivoting on people and serving them and enabling them, I can't think of a better and more important role or stakeholder than that.
Well, we are at the end of our interview. First of all, thank you very much, Bob. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for your time. I
Thank you.
hope you have a nice day.
You as well, my friend. You can tell I'm passionate about this. I am looking forward to the dialogue. So thanks again for the opportunity. Be well.
I'm looking forward to your keynote. I will not miss it for anything.
Thank you.